these negotiations are not even about Ukraine. These are negotiations actually about Europe, without Europe at the table.
Was Trump right when he said that Ukraine doesn't have the cards without the US right now?
In terms of sanctions alignment, I think a lot can be done, especially between the United States and European Union.
Shocked when Russia, as permanent member of the Security Council, waged a war of aggression against Ukraine and violated the Charter of the United Nations. We are a few years now in the war, and there are a lot of negotiations going on. There have been some sanctions. So maybe what we could do together, Olena and Bohdan, is discuss what we hope that negotiations can accomplish, and maybe the role of sanctions. We have really two experts on sanctions and more, and on negotiations. So it would be really good to have your perspectives on that. Olena, do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Thank you, Alan, for these introductory remarks, and I just want to mention that the expert on negotiation here is you. So I'm more expert on Russian foreign policy and European security and Ukrainian foreign policy, obviously. So, and Russian strategic narratives. So yes. This topic on negotiations is like the third round is being expected. So, and there are a lot of expectations actually also from Ukrainian side, because there is a fatigue and people are tired and people want this war to stop. But the problem is that there are no signs actually that these negotiations will bring us peace or any kind of, I don't even speak about just peace, though without justice there is no possibility of permanent peace. Yeah. So we can discuss today why that, like a bit of historical context and a bit of political context, why Russia cannot stop waging the war, and it's not just the war in Ukraine, but the war in general as a political instrument and the survival mood of the Russian leadership. Yeah, and we can speak about sanctions. So
sanctions, Bohdan. I mean, there was a lot of hopes, right? Many hopes that with the sanctions somehow we would rebalance the process, right? And that the negotiation conditions would change with the sanctions.
Yes, definitely sanctions is important a part of this game between Russia and Ukrainian allies, and they play a crucial role in making the waging aggressive war against Ukraine more costly, and to spend more money actually on running the Russian war machine. Whether they are enough, whether we see a number of sanctions that correspond with the gravity of the situation, I think the answer is not. But whether the direction is right, it's yes. And just a couple of words to add on negotiations. I think it's interesting to see how it started with a re-election of Trump, when his key idea was a ceasefire regime, not negotiation. Ceasefire within 24 hours. Stop the fighting and then we make a deal. But you see how it's changed. Now we're talking about long-lasting negotiation process, and I think in this context especially sanctions play even greater role.
So there is resilience of the Ukrainian people, both at war, but also through negotiations. But what you're saying is that the Trump administration also needs to learn to be patient and persistent. I would like us to talk a little bit about maybe the different negotiation models, because you also enlighten us so much on this question. there is a first model. Maybe it's a very idealized, very rational model, but it's the model that has been used through the UN, through the European institutions for decades, which is the Harvard negotiation model. And the Harvard negotiation model is that negotiations should be relational. They are here to build trust, to build relationship between partners. They are also transactional. They are here, we will create value together. We will make the pie bigger and make sure there is a fair size of the pie for each. So it's really this win-win model. I think that we will see, for example, how does, in your views, especially from the Minsk negotiation, you know very well, is that a model that works? But then there is a second model, which is very much what we see at work here. It's the return of the confrontational model. And maybe it's not the return, it has always been there for some parties. The hegemons, right, whoever they are, they love a model that is purely transactional, right? Where there is one party who will have the lion's share and the others will have the crumbs, right? Nothing much, right? So sometimes we have heard that Ukraine doesn't have the cards, right? And so it looks like you have on one side a bully negotiator, whether it's Russia or the United States, and on the other side you have Ukraine as the underdog. I don't think, by the way, that it's the right word to say that Ukraine is an underdog, because maybe there is a third model, and that's the resilient model, I think, of negotiation. How could you negotiate with a bully, right? And not with an idealized model, but with a responsible model. So could you tell us a little bit about negotiation with Russians? What does that mean in the past, and what does that mean today?
Negotiations with Russians is just, to my mind, speaking very shortly, it's buying time. Because
Russia wants to buy time.
No, Ukraine wanted to buy time.
Okay.
To regroup, to reinforce itself, to get some help, because it's obvious that there is nothing about Harvard model in these negotiations, not at all. And it was not from the very start, from 2014, and it has never been, I would say, even before, but maybe partially. But yeah, from 2014, I've witnessed and talked to many, and it was interesting, by the way, because there were many international peacekeepers, I would say, like representatives of international peacekeeping organizations and some consultative organizations coming to Ukraine. They were trying to impose on Ukraine this Harvard model, which didn't work at all.
Why?
So,
What's wrong with that approach?
Because there is no, like, Russia never saw Ukraine as a partner. I'm not saying even as an equal partner, but as a partner with whom Russia wanted to make a deal. The ultimate Russian goal, and the only Russian goal, was to take Ukraine as a whole, to subjugate it as a whole, to make Ukraine a vassal, not even state, but a kind of Belarus, what Belarus is today. Yeah, so there was no space for some agreement that which had a result the preservance of Ukrainian sovereignty and identity. So Russia wanted to restore kind of Soviet Union.
Sphere of influence.
It's not even a sphere of influence. It's sphere of domination by force, and it's a sphere of complete control. It's not even a sphere of influence. Sphere of influence, Russia, it's like the middle belt of Russian influence. We're speaking about Russian vision of the world order.
So they hope to accomplish that through positional, confrontational negotiations, or through war. And could sanctions play a role to rebalance the negotiation, to make maybe Russia more aware that maybe there's another way of proceeding?
Yes, like just add a little remark that, you know, imperial states, they only can expand. It's a very nature of those states, and this we observe in case of Russia, like its imperial type mind of its political leadership, and its only desire is to expand territories, influence, force, narratives, whatever it might be. Its expansion model, and it only can be stopped with decisive actions. And of course, sanctions are one among them, but not only. But let's say about sanctions then. Can it rebalance the current paradigm in negotiations? Of course not, because the Russians, they will not, especially with the current political leadership, they will not change that mindset in 1 day, in 2 days. And actually, they understand that they not longer enjoy their life in Swiss Alps, for instance, in chalet, spending money on luxury cars. But they decide to build a new world in their mind. And that's not a problem for them right now to have, let's say, do not have access to this luxury type of life. So, but there is still one more problem that sanctions cause to Russians, is the problems to their military-industrial complex, which is a key to stop in halting the aggression. And this is where sanctions should make a double pressure, triple pressure. The problem is that
double, triple? Could you say what do you mean by that?
That, for instance, sanctions level at least like even now in the United States 2 times, 3 times more than actually sanctions imposed by the European Union.
Oh, so they're still maneuvering there.
Yes,
I mean, if Europe is serious, they could at least do the same as the US has done on that.
Yes, at least to have the comparable level of sanctions which US imposed. Again, there is a criticism, and I think this criticism is very right, but still in terms of sanctions alignment, I think a lot can be done, especially between the United States and European Union. And
so it's time for Europe to walk the talk on this,
yes.
Right? I mean, Olena, you said something very important also, that Russia doesn't negotiate the same way with the United States or with Ukraine, right? So is that fair to say?
It is, because, yeah, if you're speaking about coming back to the models of negotiations,
yes.
So I would say that the Harvard model can be used analyzing US-Russian negotiations, because Russia considers that, well, in the Russian idea of the world, there are just 2 equal partners of Russia on the global arena. These are the United States and China. Yes. So yes, with these states, Russia uses this win-win model because not because Russia wants progress or mutual development, but because Russia is contained by their power. And because Russia sees them as those actors who can enforce Russia, or who can make some damage to Russia. So that's why Russia is quite careful. With Ukraine, it's the other story. It's just Ukraine doesn't exist.
It's a verticality model, right? It's vertical.
Yes, yeah. But the same model is used by Russia to the European Union.
Yes.
And this is the interesting story, because from the side of European Union, European countries, they always thought that they can use the Harvard model, because Russian representatives also behaved very nicely. They can they can play this role of very civilized and nice partners in negotiations. They're very sophisticated and educated, and yes, they know languages, so they were perceived by European partners as equal partners, and European partners were deceived by Russians actually in this way. But from Russian side, actually, Russia always viewed Europe as a target, but not as a partner, as a space where Russia can impose its sphere, can widen its sphere of influence. So why negotiate with Europe? It's better to negotiate with the main actor who actually decides everything about the European security. Because Russian leaders openly said always that those are not Europeans who decide about European security, but the United States.
So what's the role of Europe? I mean, you already mentioned they could reinforce the sanctions. How could that work? I'm not sure they want to be among the hegemons, but how could they be taken seriously? And also, what would be the difference between Europe as a power and maybe the other 3 hegemons?
I think that is a very heated discussion about the effectiveness of sanctions, and I think is sometimes incorrect, because yes, they might be effective, they might be not effective, but the case that they in place is a primary effect of concern. But yet, there is not only, you cannot win Russia only with sanctions. There should be reinforced with other tools, instruments, which are at the table of the European Union. And again, like, we see great financial support, and that's what Ukrainian people are grateful for, like, for this continuous financial support. Yet, I think with a weaponry supply, with missile supply, with arms, shell supply, and drone supply to Ukraine can be improved several times. And this argument will be listened by Moscow more carefully and more attentively, like many, many times than even new 20 packages of sanctions.
Peace. I mean, we talk a lot about peace, right? What could peace accomplish, and what is fair and just peace for Ukraine? I mean, is that a fair target, and how could it happen?
That's a difficult question. I mean, that's, from the one hand, it's easy question, because the just peace is the peace that is accomplished by, according with also with the international humanitarian law, when all war criminals are punished, yeah, including the leader of the Russia, Putin himself.
But how could they even agree to a peace deal when they would be persecuted?
Yes, so that's why I say that this is this mission is very complex and difficult, but it doesn't mean that we do not that we must stop perceiving it.
So no peace without justice. There must be some.
Without justice, there will be no peace, actually, because the second war will be postponed.
It's a pause.
Yeah, it's a pause. It's a pause.
Fair peace, just peace, is that something that the current mediation system that is put in place could accomplish? And security guarantees is a word, I mean, there's an expression we don't stop hearing.
I think, like, now is what negotiations are about. They're not about just peace. And what we heard about from, like, all stakeholders involved in the negotiations, the one particular word is missing is justice. So, and you even might heard from the news outlets that it was some kind of impunity for all those involved in aggressive war. And I mean, is this normal for international law and international legal order? Again, and the question is to European Union, because European Union is close neighbor to Russia, is actually a neighbor to Russia. And does it mean that such an impunity will be imposed on Russian political leadership, on Russian military command? And will it open the door for new aggression?
I would say that these negotiations are not just about peace, they're about managed war, but these negotiations are not even about Ukraine. Those are talks, we see that those are talks between from Russian point of view, between Moscow and Washington about the European order. So these are negotiations actually about Europe, without Europe at the table. So there are no talks about peace
not
right
even
now.
About Ukraine.
Let's be realistic.
And it's nearly a talk between Russia and the United States about Ukraine. It looks like the Munich setting agreement of 1938.
Not about Ukraine even.
I mean, Ukraine is like the secondary actor, and it should be agreed upon without even European Union. Between Russia, if Russia and the United States agree, there could be a deal. Or will can Ukraine face a reality that they may not have the support of the United States militarily or through the intelligence system of Starlink? Could they continue a war if there is no just peace? They could continue the war and face it?
I think it would be the most unfortunate thing to happen, and I don't even want to think about it. Like, well, if it happens, if United States leaves the negotiation table in the setting when it leaving Ukraine alone, without providing access to intelligence, without supporting Ukraine with missile for stop ballistic missiles. Again, just imagine the destruction of civilian cities of Kyiv. You will see no electricity plants in Ukraine more, because there will be no protection against ballistic missiles. So what they would achieve doing that, I don't know. They would appease Russians? Probably yes. But what's the next? Would they have something in return? I think no.
Was Trump right when he said that Ukraine doesn't have the cards without the US. And maybe the EU, the European Union, in this situation, they don't have the cards without the US right now?
It concerns, I think, every country which do not have protection against missiles, ballistic missiles, because otherwise you have only limited capacities to protect the cities. They can be destroyed, like with Russian missiles, easily scattered. And again, you have only like 2-3 weaponry in the world able to protect the cities. Yes. And one of them, the main producer of them, is United States. So, of course, I think the best strategy is to keep United States aligned as much as possible at any cost that European Union can't think about, which is, let's say, something that can be reasonably paid and agreed. But of course, it should be some limits to the extent the international law, international legal orders should prevail. But again, it's very fragile balance here. And of course, like, we don't know how realize it.
Yes. I mean, we are here in the Palazzo Buontalenti, and we are actually in the Hannah Arendt's room, right, who was talking about the banality of evil. But we're also in this room when you see a neighbor, Florence, attacking another neighbor, Siena, and making it glorious for us to admire on the frescoes. But when I see these frescoes and how sometimes neighbors could be aggressing another neighbor, I also think of Machiavelli, because all our conversation is about what Machiavelli would say in some ways, right? He was really aware how divided Italian states were and how vulnerable they were towards the bully of the time, which was the Kingdom of France, right? And he said, it's great to have all this beauty around, but we need an army of citizens for it. We need strength, right? Peace through strength. And sometimes I wonder, I mean, we should talk a little bit, maybe last minute, about European leadership, because it looks like there's a learning curve for European leaders today, right? The learning curve is that it started with ostriches. We could nearly do a Darwinian theory of evolution. It started with ostriches. You know, ostriches, they bury their heads in the sand, not wanting to see what was happening. It may have been the situation of Europe, not seeing the evolution. But then it looks like during the last 2 years, it was much more like cats. You know, cats who arch they see prey, but they will arch their back, and they will just look like they could be offensive, but they won't attack. So Ukraine, I wrongly said, was the underdog here. Maybe Machiavelli said it's time for foxes and lions to be out there. So European leadership, do we need to finish with ostriches? Do we need to finish with cats? Is it time to show, like the Ukrainians, that you need sometimes to be lions when you are facing a bear or foxes? So what do we expect from European leadership here?
Yeah, I would say that it's high time for Europe to transform its passive normative power into active power, active leadership. Otherwise, Europe won't survive here, because right now Europe is considered as a weaker player, because Europe cannot survive without the United States. Though it would have been able, but
a united Europe, but with really the power, united, with defense,
yes,
with strong defense.
Really united Europe, yes, with defense autonomy.
And supporting Ukraine seriously.
Not just supporting Ukraine seriously, but including Ukraine as an equal partner in its defense architecture.
Without so maybe NATO with Ukraine without the US?
With the US, preferably, but with Ukraine definitely, because it's already recognized.
First line of defense. It has shown its strength
and Ukraine has knowledge, and it has courage, and it has experience.
The new kind of war that's happening.
And it has experience.
So leadership, European leadership, what could we expect here?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the lack of European leadership, especially prominent European leaders who could act, not only just make statements, but make actions, decisive actions, enforceable actions, which Russia will take into account. That is very important. And again, there is some lack in doing that. And I think there should be definitely an action point, including Ukraine, first of all, in its defensive architecture for the future of Ukrainian European integration, and it could be a starting point to do that. Like there are many problems with infrastructure, rule of law, and blah, 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 but that it can be the first strategic cooperation and alignment issue is a common security area, including Ukraine and Europe.
So thrice you said action, I think leadership. So if I summarize this, is maybe the EUI and your presence here is evidence of that. It's the power of knowledge for action. Does that work? Maybe for a little better. We hope that it will be that the Ukrainian citizens also will also feel better in the next future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.